You're listening to an episode recorded during the time Innovation Fuel was part of University Canada West. We are proud and grateful for the work we've done together, and we want to thank the university for being in our podcast. We are now excited to continue the journey of Innovation Fuel into its next chapter. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Innovation Fuel, the podcast that brings you fantastic stories from entrepreneurs and key industry professionals. I am Dave Gelareh.
And I am Gelareh Farhadian. We are educators, entrepreneurs, and your hosts. Innovation Fuel is our weekly business podcast brought to you by University Canada West. Each week, we explore diverse business models, entrepreneur journeys, experts' insight, and managerial challenges, and how companies stay agile and innovative during COVID-19. Check out our episodes at www.ucanwest.ca/innovationfuel.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Gelareh. How are you doing?
Well, I had a grocery shopping.
Grocery shopping?
Yeah.
Food. I love food.
You know, it's how easy because I have 3 stores just very close to me. I can just walk in there, buy whatever I want. You know, it doesn't matter if the seasonal food, the seasonal fruits, I can buy anything that I want, you know? And I've never been in the short, this superstore or this store doesn't have this specific food or type of food. There's always the access to food.
Oh yeah, we have access, and we can even go even further. We can put little gardens in our backyard, and we can grow some of these things. We can go to the garden store, and we can grow them too. We can have that access to those things because we tend to be in. We're both in very city-based elements. We're close to all the amenities that we would need to access these foods.
Yeah, but it's the food. There's many things is involved in the food supply chain. You know, it's about expiry dates, fresh fruits. You know, and we think that if we access this one in Canada, we think that everyone have access in the Canada, which is not true.
No, it's not true. You think about like we're both in very central areas where it's easy to access these things. But then as you move outside of Vancouver and into the interiors and even out to some of these rural areas and rural islands, it becomes harder and harder to find that food.
Yeah, I met a lady in the on the bus. Mm-hmm. She was coming from Boyne Island just to Vancouver to do her grocery shopping. It's in the BC, very cold island, to Vancouver, but it's because. And they had to shop a lot for a couple of weeks to make sure she has access to fruits and fresh stuff, because sometimes they cannot have access.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, but Gelareh, if they even had access to it, even if they had a small community and access to it, I'm sure the cost is atrocious.
Oh, because there's supply. I mean, do you think that it's to send it over the ship there?
Yeah.
How often? They will ship it. I mean, it's costly. Of course, it's super expensive. But they don't have that supply chain that we have it here. And
no.
But we think that because we live in Canada, we live in Vancouver, everyone has the same access to basic needs, which is not true.
It's not true. It's not true. And I think we need to have this discussion. I think we have someone today that might be able to open our eyes to some of the situation in Canada.
Absolutely. And we want to welcome Kerry Gibson. And she's our student at UCW. This is a good thing. And she is trying to promote the clean technologies, food to the remote areas.
Wow.
We never thought that it's going to be a problem. You know, just internet access.
Yeah.
You know, you have internet access everywhere in Vancouver, but doesn't mean that everyone in Canada have the same luxury.
Not at all. Not at all.
Let's talk with Kerry Gibson and see what is her challenges and what challenges she's solving. Welcome, Kerry Gibson, to another episode of Innovation Fuel.
Yes, welcome, Kerry, to our Innovation Fuel podcast. We're so glad to have you. And guess what? We are so glad because Kerry is actually a current MBA student at University Canada West. And that's very exciting for us. You know, she's coming back to do some more schooling. But Kerry, let's get some information out to our audience about who you are.
Thank you so much. Yes, I love being a mature student at UCW. It's an interesting experience, and it is so applicable to the work I'm doing now. And, I can't wait to graduate and further implement everything that I'm learning. Although I've been in the business community for many years, it provides an entirely new perspective to what I'm doing. And I'm able to apply those skills directly to my projects, which is very interesting. And especially getting feedback from my professors on work that I'm actually doing at this moment. And speaking of the work that I'm doing at this moment, I'm with a founder of this project, Nutrition Through Engagement and Agricultural Technologies at Simon Fraser University, developing circular economy agri-systems to address food sovereignty in remote and Indigenous communities. And I love this program. It's a collaborative enterprise between Indigenous communities and Simon Fraser University, as well as all of our amazing partners, both from academia and the private sector. And kind of just working together to kind of close those gaps between resources and knowledge and implementation with this business lens, right? Being able to create sustainability, both financially and socially. And that led me to start working with this company in New York City. We service ZiphyCare is a remote diagnostic health technology that delivers healthcare to anywhere. Basically, your doctor can be, in his home office or her home office. And we have OCCs, on-site care coordinators, who deliver this toolbox. It's called a Zippy Kit. And the Zippy Kit and the OCC goes to your home or your office and are basically the physician's eyes. So it not only it's practical and it can reach those marginalized populations that might be, accessing the healthcare in a comprehensive way and maintaining their health through, managed care programs. But also, it minimizes expense, both from physicians' visits as well as reducing hospital costs. I mean, in the US, it's a bit of a different model than our socialized system here in Canada. The physicians in the hospitals and the hospital administration loves it because, they're not paying, expenses and taking up those beds, especially during this pandemic where those beds are not available.
So what exactly about the NEAT project? What problem you're solving on that project that you have at the SFU?
That project is, it was interesting because there are a lot of communities that struggle with access to food. In the community that we piloted with, we connected with chief and council and local stakeholders, who told us about how they feed themselves. Essentially, there is, nothing grown on site. Everything is shipped in from Port Hardy, and Port Hardy is a 12-hour ferry ride away. This community is isolated on the BC coastline with no road access whatsoever. So they are basically reliant. Every 2 weeks, they get a shipment in. And of course, it's a really bumpy ferry ride. So by the time that food gets transported, let's say your oranges start in California, end up in Port Hardy eventually, and by the time they get to Clem-to, there's little nutritional value. Anything that's delicate has been damaged. So people have been reliant primarily on processed food, and never mind those shipping costs are so exorbitant that by the time they get to a community like Clem-to, like peanut butter costs $15. So yeah, it's shipping is one of the major things. And of course, this is not, environmentally friendly. It's, it's a detriment to the community, especially when there's such rich heritage and language and traditions that need to be preserved. The community was kind of struggling with what is the answer to this. So, it being such a small community, they were very welcoming in talking about how we can share resources and skills to create a model that delivers food security and food access on the ground. So, should this pandemic, for instance, shut down those ferries, they wouldn't be reliant on helicopter drops of, craft dinner and whatnot, but then they could actually be feeding themselves from the greenhouse, from the gardens, and getting that adequate nutrition that comes from vegetables that you pick, immediately, same day service, right? But the problem with food security is that it can't be just the greenhouse. There needs to be an entire system built around it, clean energy systems in order to heat that greenhouse, curriculum in the schools and the community to talk about nutrition and how to plant and how to grow and what these vegetables are, because some of these, vegetables are unique, that perhaps have not been, introduced to the children. And of course, the kids are the primary advocates to what is being, eaten at home. It's kind of a very Jamie Oliver concept, right? Because of course, Jamie Oliver went to schools and, in California and whatnot and realized that kids didn't know what a tomato was. They knew what ketchup was, but they didn't know what a tomato was.
Great. It's so great. So not only you're teaching the people how to grow the vegetable, but also you're teaching the school, the students or kids.
Yes, we have some great grad students from Simon Fraser University and from UBC as well, who work with us to develop workshops and programs and curriculum, and for direct implementation. And it's all linked to the BC school curriculum, so that teachers can then reference how these workshops and learnings can apply directly to what they are directed to teach in the classroom already.
So your main primary activity is teaching.
What was it? Is part of it. But the thing is, when you're talking about systems change initiatives, it has to be so much more comprehensive, right? So there's a lot of engineering and technical expertise, talking about soil remediation, zero waste initiatives. What was it? There's, financial analysis, how much we can do, why, what was it? What's most important and what are the priorities? And, working with the government relations, this one community has a small hydro dam or hydro plant. And this hydro plant was insufficient for the size of the community. They were often in brownout mode. So we weren't able, off the bat, to heat the greenhouse, which of course, reduces the ability to produce, right? We're talking northern BC. It gets pretty frigid, half of the year. And so without that heating, you're only getting your vegetables for half the year. And of course, people need to eat every day.
Oh, that is a fantastic. So what are your key activities in your project? So one is teaching, another one creating the greenhouse. What else? Or for example, look at the financial analysis, what you're creating for those communities.
Exactly. A lot of it is in kind. So we work to develop partnerships, for instance. Negotiating with suppliers and, we have a great partnership, for instance. I spoke about the expense of transportation to this community. And so, we have North Orange Transportation, who gives us incredible discount on getting everything we need into the community in order to build. We provide the design, we provide tools and the learning, as well as we're developing partnerships within the community with businesses that already exist there. For instance, there's an Eco Lodge, and this Eco Lodge, I love how it operates, because not only is it delivering, an economic project to the community itself, encouraging tourism into the community, as well as working to protect their rainforests, which the Hehe Nation are stewards of, but they also have a mission to implement the SDGs as much as possible within that community and be activists, for that change. And so, the lodge is working with us to start introducing the use of the vegetables that we're growing on site. That part has been built in consultation with chief council, community surveys, speaking to the school principal and teachers of, what they would like to see within their own community. And then we help them build it. This isn't us going into the community and saying, this is how you fix everything. It's a community vision.
And do you have challenges getting people on board your plan, or is it this like how do you get the messaging across that you're here to support and help?
We were actually really lucky. When beginning this pilot, we had a connection to the community already. It was a pre-existing relationship. And our key funders, they were already working in the community. So they introduced us directly to chief and council, and then we started, building relationships. There is a young man who is a game changer within the community who works so hard, and he was our key advocate. He's the one of the deputy chiefs. His name is Isaiah Robinson, and he worked directly with us to make these engagements and connections, build trust and an understanding, and being able to understand, well, how does a community communicate within itself? Well, they have a Facebook page, which everybody's on. They have a newsletter. They, to have the post office, and all of these areas to understand how the community truly functions.
Perfect, really great. So, what are your resources in this project? What kind of resources you use? And you have it.
Well, basically, it's Simon Fraser University, so it's academia. So we have a lot of knowledge available to us in all different areas, so that we are able to work with other departments in order to bring those in. We're also building relationships with other universities, bring their skills and resources and knowledge, which, from institution to institution do vary. And, there's, for instance, University of the Fraser Valley, has the Canadian Chair for Food Security within their faculty, and of course KPU, they've got a farm, UBC Farms, but also we have our private partners, who are able to support us with, actual goods. That's our key thing, to provide the materials. We basically start the project and we provide a lot of materials to build it. But the sustainability of it, we find resources within the community that can then invest in this project themselves. For instance, we have a great partnership with the school that has supported. For instance, we were building these new hoop houses, and currently the children are all painting them. So we provide the materials, they do the labor, and basically paint these beautiful hoop houses for the garden beds. There's a lot of different intersections there. It's quite often when a project happens, it's just one piece of that puzzle. A company or an organization or a school or something takes one piece of the puzzle, but in order to build a sustainable model, you have to look at all of the areas that need to be addressed in order for it to function after we're gone, right? We're going to be there as long as we're needed, but we want to make ourselves redundant,
So Kerry, with this element, you said it's a pilot. And so how do you measure the success here? And then if it's successful, how do you then scale it up to other communities that need the same resources?
Oh, exactly. In fact, we're doing that just right now. We have a grad student who we were able to access a grant to do a research project within the community to determine the success of the project. And a lot of that comes back from the community themselves, right, through surveys and interviews. It's a lot of storytelling about how it's been impacted and where we need to grow and, change the system and, and do more, right? What are for instance, garden beds, are they too high? Are they too low? do we need to get you different kinds of seeds that might be, different interest to you, right? Working toward harvesting of more indigenous plants, traditional, vegetables and produce and whatnot. And during the pandemic, of course, we've connected with a lot of other communities who also want to see us work with them, right? We're able to provide a lot of resources that they might not have in-house, and, be able to consult and develop something that is custom designed to their needs as well. Because of course, each community is not cookie cutter. And so we need to develop something special that is desired by the community.
So, and Kerry, with that element, let's go down the path of COVID. You've got COVID-19 now. These communities are very sensitive to the spread of this virus. Like, how does that change your model and accessing these villages and being able to support them?
Oh, it has changed everything. It's very unfortunate that we weren't able to do our scheduled team visits where we, we do this quarterly. The team goes up there and, stays for a week or two and is able to work directly with the community. And, it's so much easier in-person engagement to understand and have those conversations without it being so formal, right? People feel a lot more comfortable when there's a trust and through connectivity, but through this it's been interesting. We were able to do a lot of remote engagement, of course, remote meetings and FaceTimes and phone calls and all of that, as well as we were really fortunate that one of our team was flexible enough that she actually got permission and customs clearance. She did the tests and whatnot, actually moved into the community. So
wow.
Yeah, I know. And what an amazing experience for her, right? So she's living within the community right now as we speak and being able to engage in person. And so she's able to be that liaison for us. And as well as, it's spring, so there's planting and building and all of these things. We're currently expanding the garden system, putting in more garden beds. The school is going to be taking over some beds for its own production, as well as, we're working with this eco lodge. They'll be growing some vegetables within the garden as well. It's a great opportunity.
She's really great. Thanks to her. How could you find her?
Oh, it was actually wonderful. So this project came out of something called a Dev Lab at Simon Fraser University. And I pitched the idea. The idea actually came from, a few years ago, my little sister adopted from Ethiopia. And my dad had gone over there and was telling me about the conditions around this orphanage, which were pretty tragic, right? And there's all this arable land and nothing is being done with it. And, there's such poverty and, and the kids are living off of rice. And I started sketching up some ideas. And it's funny because these ideas that my dad and I were coming up with came from a project that he did at Alkali Lake back in the 1980s. And so Dad, back in the day, was economic advisor and band manager for the Alkali Lake Indian Band. And, he worked with Chief and Council to develop an economic development program that worked in conjunction with the Alcohol Anonymous projects that were going in at that time. They made a movie out of it, actually. It's called The Honor of All. And it's actually used in a model for Indigenous education. My sister actually took her master's in Indigenous education, and she was quite surprised to see the movie played as part of her curriculum. But basically, they used economic development to give people purpose. The chief, realized that to battle addiction and mental health and whatnot is to give people purpose and hope. And everybody got a job. Everybody started learning, whether it be how to build a house or how to farm, or they built a mill. And so it was a great way to motivate.
Yeah, perfect. So one more thing is that, what is your biggest challenge right now for your project?
Funding.
Funding. So do you think that why you think the funding, why don't you cannot use any governmental funds?
No, we can. The problem is in a project like this, most of your work is writing grants. and it is time consuming and it's comprehensive and it varies from grant to grant. So it's not like you can copy and paste. And so it would be wonderful to have some kind of facilitating department that is like this liaison between, university projects such as this that are social impact and systems change and the funding sources, because they are out there. There's foundations and governments and, these organizations and even private investors and whatnot that are very interested to see the building of self-sufficiency within remote Indigenous communities. And, it's part of reconciliation, right? Which we should truly all be invested in. And so it's, as part of that process, it would be great to have some kind of facilitating agency that can write and, match make the funding to the project. Because funding, the more money we have for projects like this that work and that are easy to scale, the more people we can impact.
Yeah, I smell a new technology coming on here. I think there's a business challenge here. Like, it sounds like there's some kind of a challenge between getting the funding and getting the resources to get the funding. There's some kind of, seems like there's a breakdown in between here.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is definitely a business challenge, and this is something that we are starting to look at. This is, kind of on our timeline as to, what we want to see. However, we haven't had the time to address it comprehensively yet, because of course there's two parts. There needs to be a look at the financial viability of the project itself. What was said through the university, how it can be sustained and maintained as this university project, but also within the community. How can we, create sustainability, financial sustainability as a project? There is a band store, there's the Eco Lodge, there's an economic development office, and how can we basically take what's being grown in the garden and monetize that in enough of a way, because we still, want to have kind of a social development aspect to it, but monetize it enough that it pays for itself. It pays for the people who are, working in the garden and that, that we employ, as well as the supplies and maintenance and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. It's a great thing. So how about the ZiphyCare? How it's helpful here?
Yeah, when I came across ZiphyCare, it was interesting. I was introduced to the company through an old friend of mine, Dan Rosenstein, who is the head of impact investment at Morgan Stanley in New York. And I was in conversation with him and telling him about project and how I thought we can start addressing nutrition and well-being in communities, but how do we really measure it if we don't have adequate healthcare within the communities? How are people getting better if we don't know? And, we want to ensure that, this impact is being measured, because of course we're in academia. We like to measure things and, publish or perish, right? And so he actually connected me with, to our CEO, Retta, and this technology was developed by doctors for doctors, right? They wanted to be able to do more than a video call with their patients. And of course, this is way pre-pandemic. I mean, it's still, a mid-phase startup, but, the pandemic just kind of highlighted the need for something more comprehensive than a video call. So, this technology basically could mean that, let's say we have, diabetes patients, heart patients and whatnot, in Clem2, their doctor and specialists and whatnot would be in Vancouver. Well, they don't have to go to Vancouver, which would probably cost them about $5,000 round trip, to get that treatment when the box is on site. We train someone on site how to use the box, and they still get the same level of care as they would if they were in the doctor's office. So it was just this amazing technology that I had to get on board with, and now I'm working as the VP of Strategic Partnerships and Engagement.
So what do you have do you have any challenge to implement those
this technology, ZiphyCare technology?
Well, implementing ZiphyCare technology in Canada is exactly what I'm doing right now. So any type of ideas as to rapid implementation, right now we're working with different organizations to set up pilot projects. Actually, what was it, doing research in Indigenous communities, but those are still in the very early stages. And so we're hoping that will be like proof of concept essentially for the Canadian market, as well as, seeing how well, the Canadian community accepts a technology like this. I've done some demos with physicians groups and whatnot, and, they were shocked because they thought this technology wasn't going to be out for like 10 years. So it's ahead of its time. So we're just hoping that we can launch it, get it going.
Absolutely. It's very important and necessary for those remote communities. It's really important. Yes, of course.
So with that in mind, Kerry, like we know Canada is very conservative with these things. Like to get to video conferencing, it took COVID-19 to get to video conferences. Like only 2 provinces really accepted the doctor visit through video, and that was BC and Ontario. Other provinces haven't really jumped on board. And now they're kind of forced on board. But what kind of other challenges will we face with this new technology? I think it's great technology. I think it's great to get those things out there. But how do we deal with this regulatory beast?
Well, MSP, for instance, like how do we develop an MSP code specifically for a technology like this that they've never seen before or, understood that it would exist, MSP codes have changed so rapidly during COVID, hopefully that process would be speeded up perhaps because they're more open to innovation and perhaps the pandemic was, there's a silver lining in that it might be a little bit easier to do that. But yes, there are these regulatory hurdles, the institutional culture of things that we're going to have to persuade some people that this is, in the best interest of the community as well as the best interest of, the country. We can save so much money, both for individuals and for the healthcare system by keeping people healthy at home.
I 100% agree with you, Kerry, and I think you guys are taking the right approach and going after these communities that need support like this as the pilot project so we can work with those, and maybe that will scale up into other communities even around us that, we think about seniors, they can't get to these places and their the accessibility. So I love what you're doing, Kerry, and I think, and I think our conversation could go on and on about so many different things here. But Kerry, I want to go back and highlight the challenge. I think we threw a challenge out to the students. I want to go back to that NACE challenge that you had talked about before. I think there's an opportunity here for us to see if students can really get behind this, and maybe UCW can help in this community initiative too.
I think that would be fabulous. Having students engaged. At Simon Fraser, our primary resource are grad students, and it would be wonderful to have UCW business students involved in the solution of, creating a financially sustainable business model for the NEAT program.
Perfect.
Love it. I love it. I think this is great. We need to put that challenge out. You guys heard it from Kerry. We have a challenge. UCW students, you have a challenge. We have a challenge to support. Bring some of your business knowledge, your financial knowledge. Let's see what we can do to help support this initiative. I think there's another challenge in here too around how do we help with bridging, making it easier for associations like Kerry here around technology, about how can we help them get their funding faster and more efficiently so we can not be waiting for these things to happen. I think there's another challenge there.
Absolutely.
It's so great, Kerry. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being with Innovation Fuel Podcast and share your phenomenal journey. It was great for everyone to understand what the community needs, what is the remote community needs, what is still we need a lot of work to do on the corporate social responsibilities, sustainable development. And it's very absolutely important that all the private sector, public sector get engaged for this development. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Kerry, thank you very much. We'll have to make sure that you're involved in our internship and capstone programs here that we've now launched at UCW. Let's get those students out working with you, and let's get this story into the classroom so that we can start solving some of these challenges. Love it. Thank you.
That would be fabulous. Thank you. I'm come from a partnerships background, and, partnerships are the way we're going to change, what needs to be changed. So I definitely appreciate it and look forward to working with UCW in many capacities.
Absolutely. We are going to build on ecosystems here to be sustainable ecosystems, and all the players should work together to solve this bigger problem. Yeah. Thank you. Have a great day.
To all entrepreneurs and managers out there, we have ambitious students here at UCW who would love to hear from you and help you with your business through our internship, our capstone program. If you think you have a wonderful story or a challenge that you want to share with our students and our audience that you think they can benefit from, we want to hear from you. We want that information. We want you to be a part of this show. We also want you to join our mentorship program. We've got a great mentorship program to help students as they move on their educational journey towards getting into a career or launching a new opportunity. So reach out to us, connect with us at www.ucanwest.ca/Innovation Fuel.
You have just listened to the Innovation Fuel podcast with your hosts, Dave and Gelareh. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Join us next week for another innovative story. Thank you for listening and have a great week.